Okay, so about a year or two ago, we found a guy on YouTube, and his name was Ryan Somerfield. And we first started watching him because he looked a lot like one of our close friends, Andrew Pelock. Shout out Pelock. I know you're watching, and I know you subscribe and you like and you share with all your friends, just like everybody else that watches does. But we quickly realized that we should keep watching his channel, not because he looks like Pelock, but because he actually knows what he's talking about, and he does a lot of the same things that we did. So we kept watching him, and then Morgan and I went to NAB this past April, and we got to meet him. And then somehow, I have no idea how, we convinced him to come hang out with us. So today, we're going to interview and have a small discussion on a few different topics, basically revolving around the state of virtual production and things like that. So everybody, welcome to SociallyU, our friend Ryan Somerfield. Howdy, Ryan.
Oh, hey.
How's it going, man?
Brilliant. How you doing?
I am so good. It's super awesome to have you here. We're just going to kind of go through a small list of questions, and then we're going to kind of open this up to a discussion. We think it's really important to collaborate with different people who are in the same space as you and are trying to learn the same things that you are. And we think I had this opportunity to have Ryan come here and hang out with us and see some of the production that we do during the week. And he's shown us everything that we've done wrong constantly. That's literally all he said is you're doing it wrong the entire time he's been here.
Pretty much.
So Ryan and you guys, I also have Isaac and also Morgan's here as well. Look at that double shot.
Whoa.
So let's start with, where are you from, man? Obviously you do not sound like us. So give us a little rundown on your life story, sort of where you grew up and where you're from.
Yeah, look, I mean, definitely not from around here, but I am from Sydney, Australia. It is a wonderful part of the world. It is a long way away from here, but, you know, that's okay. So, born and raised in Sydney, Australia, and, yeah, I've always been a bit of a tech nerd myself, love playing with gear and doing all that kind of stuff, and have a background in camera work, so I've done a lot of specialist camera work, from movies, commercials, that kind of thing, Steadicam, all those fun things.
Awesome.
And yeah, I've done a bunch of work in broadcasts from most of the channels in Australia and all that kind of stuff. And I guess when COVID happened and all that was happening, I was like, well, hey, how do we pivot this and do it differently and better, hopefully? So that's where kind of went into the online space a little bit more. And yeah, that's a very quick nutshell of my life, I guess.
That's awesome. You know, I think it's a very common thread here as well, was COVID kind of like jump started this company. The studio itself, it kind of existed in a more minor form, but COVID really kind of kickstarted the SociallyU studio into a larger existence and a more high-end production, because it used to be solely a software company here in the building. And then whenever COVID happened, everybody went home. And Andre was like, well, I don't have to go home. And so they kind of rebuilt and did everything. And actually, I got hired on here at the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's funny that you mentioned that. It's a lot of parallels between kind of a lot of different companies and a lot of people who are in this space, especially in the virtual live event or remote live event space. COVID sort of showed, oh, hey, you know, you can sort of like, you can do this from afar, but like also people really want to do like the in-person. So there's sort of this like hybrid. You still get those people who want to go to an event, but like, you know, the single mom who's an entrepreneur who can't travel to Orlando on a Wednesday to go to your event, you know, those kind of people, like you learned about like that extra audience that some people can reach. So of course COVID pushed a lot of that. So you mentioned briefly some of the things that you've done, but what got you started in the world of production?
What got me started? As a kid, I remember I had a friend and he was like, hey, there's a film festival at the age of 12. It was like, you have to make a 7-minute film in 24 hours. We should do this. I'm like, that sounds dumb. That's great. Let's do it. So, yeah, so that was the first ever short film I made. And then from that point, I started, you know, doing more filming, more editing, got a gig doing editing work and
Nice.
Did that through school and out of school, basically jumped straight into business and doing camera work. I was just constantly researching, learning, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's how I got into the production space. I did a lot of work in like sound live production as well. So I kind of have like a large range of experience in those kind of things. But yeah, that's made it a lot of fun.
Okay, before you go any further, what was your 7-minute film about?
It was basically a Freaky Friday style thing. So it was these two brothers wake up one day and they're turned into their sisters. And yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Oh, that's awesome. Sorry, you just said 7-minute film and you're talking about the past. And I'm like, okay, I have to ask what that was about. That's cool. So obviously continuing on that topic of you mentioned school. So in Australia, in the United States, we go from like kindergarten through 12th grade. Mm-hmm. You go to like a senior. Is it similar in Australia? Or?
Yeah, so we have primary, which is K to 6, and then secondary, which is 7 to 12.
Did you do anything like that in school, or was that not included in like a curriculum or anything like that?
There was a little bit, but I mean, I was doing a lot of the stuff anyway outside of school because every holidays I was with mates, we were making short films and just doing whatever we could to have fun, really, and just learn what we can. And we were playing with, Windows Movie Maker back in the time, and moved into Premiere. We're like, oh, we can do lightsabers with this cool effects thing. We're doing a frame-by-frame drawing and stuff, and we actually we painted a green screen back then, and we're doing had like a Matrix-style film, doing green screen that long ago in Premiere, and that was just horrible. So it's definitely come a long way from that point of view. So yeah, but always just trying to figure out new ways of doing things and pushing the limits, basically. So yeah.
Okay, obviously I switched positions because I realized I was looking off screen when I was interviewing Ryan. So I have come up to Andre's ultimate position. Okay, so we left off when I jumped up here. We were talking about school, and we were talking about how it wasn't necessarily in the curriculum, but it was like you and your friends hanging out doing things. Did you go to any type of school after, like your primary school?
Yeah, so I did a part-time course for a year, and basically in that year you made a feature film. So we all band together, learned some stuff, and we made a film out of that. It wasn't great, but we did a thing. So that was my first feature film. I've done 5 since then, I think. So yeah, but that was a good experience to actually go for the whole thing of making a film from beginning to end. I was the DOP on that one, so it was good. That's
awesome. And a lot of people, and I don't have like a huge opinion on this, but I spoke at my buddy's a teacher at a school one time, and I had a bunch of kids who were interested in this field, and a lot of them asked me about like going to film school or whether they should or shouldn't, and like I told them it's basically what you said. It's like if you don't have to, but if you have the means and you can, then it's just a really good way to like drive you into like doing projects for you to like learn those skills. Because it's like you either work your way into learning those skills, or you can go to a school and do something like that. How long was that program for?
So that was for a year, but I feel like today I'd almost recommend things differently, because especially now with YouTube, with so much content that you can just find online anywhere, it's so easy to be able to learn what you want and how you want to as well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that will make you useful in the industry is learning how to problem solve and finding an issue and going, how can I figure this out? And that could be a physical issue, like story issue, whatever.
Yeah.
Because without that skill, it's very difficult to be able to work, because sure, you can learn how to turn on a camera, how to light something, how to do stuff, but ultimately all those things are problems that you are solving. And if you can figure out how to problem solve and go, hey, how can I learn what I need to learn and find out what I need to learn as well? If you can figure that out, that's ultimately, I feel like, the best way.
Yeah.
And yes, there are courses out there. There are people that can teach you, and that's also good as well. But ultimately, if you get into the industry, no one's going to be telling you what to do. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. And yeah, I feel like these days I'm kind of going, jump on YouTube, find what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's why I made a YouTube channel, because I wanted to I make the content that I want to see myself.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's a lot of questions out there, and it's a very small band of people doing it. So
that's hilarious because and Isaac can attest to this, especially like whenever we're like trying to figure things out. YouTube would fall under the same thing, but Andre always says Google is your friend.
oh yeah,
So like figure like anytime I have like a question, like the number one thing he'll say to me, and I would look at him as like not only a boss but sort of a mentor in this field, because like really I came here with like zero skills. Like I knew how to run it, I knew how to make like cool Instagram videos, you know. But his thing is like it feels like the power of learning is in the journey of figuring it out yourself, because that's when you truly learn. It's like doing that problem solving and figuring that out.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so when you went into production, you mentioned Steadicam and you mentioned working for different networks within Australia. Give us like a couple of examples of like a network that you worked on, or a production that you worked on that sort of like solidified like one of those learning experiences that you went through that we were sort of just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of work for channels. I did work for Spidercam. I was one of the technicians and operators of that. So
Cool.
I'd go around the country and operate that.
That is literally my one of my dream jobs. Dude. That's so cool.
It is a pretty crazy job though, because
Yeah.
it's usually first in there rigging these things and making it all work and trying to splice fiber and having 18 fiber connections and going, where is the break? It's somewhere in here, but it's
Interesting. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, please. Honestly, though, I was brought up in church and I've done a lot of work in church production as well. And I learnt a lot through that and had people mentoring me and teaching me sound and video production and that kind of thing. And I learned a lot through that because, you know, I was working in, larger churches that had, multicam, big sound desks and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of learning through that. And that's been a huge help for me, because you have access to all this stuff on like a weekly basis, which you wouldn't normally get access to.
Right.
And people who are wanting to teach you because, they need help. So
Yeah.
ultimately, so
Yeah, no doubt. So it's like what is that, like a symbiotic relationship?
Yeah,
Where you're
totally.
kind of both learning and you're both advancing and you both gain from that.
100%.
So you mentioned so what was like a large lesson in Spidercam that you might have learned though? So is it like when you were splicing fiber and trying to figure out the break, like you mentioned, is that like a life skill that you could take like from that, not only in the production world, but a life skill of like, oh, here's a problem, and maybe people haven't gone through a problem where they have to like test and figure things out. So is that sort of an example of something that had taught you like how to problem solve and deal with stress and different things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of it scenarios per se, but like I mentioned, it's really is the problem solving thing. We've got a camera which is stuck in the middle of the field. You've got an ad break to figure this out. You got to go, okay, what is the most what has the most chance of being the issue, and go and figure it out and get it out of the way, because you're stopping play or anything like that.
Yeah.
Also making sure you don't run into anyone, things like that, because it's
heavy, can be very dangerous.
When you're flying around multi-million-dollar players, you go, whew, that's there's nothing stopping you from running into them and causing a lot of damage. So
we'll move on to another topic, but what's the number one sport that you would do Spidercam for? Cricket, Aussie rules?
So we kind of followed. So we did cricket in the summer, and we did rugby in the winter for a lot of time, and a bit of soccer and things like that as well. So
cool. Dude,
yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, Spidercam is such a cool thing. It's anytime I'm a huge sports fan. I'm literally the only person at the studio that is. But anytime there's the Spidercam solo view that is an option for me to watch, I always do that, because it's always just such a cool angle that you don't get to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about your past. We've talked about school, jobs, and lessons that you learned from different jobs. But what is it that you're mostly doing now?
So these days, it's funny. I've kind of pivoted a little bit from the camera work and kind of gone a lot more into the live production side of things. So the video you saw me on, which one I was doing for GitHub, and that was a live production. I had an old friend who used to run a production company, and at the peak of COVID, her husband was a trainer and public speaker, and he used to fly around the world, most of the year and speak. And she called me and went, "Hey, we've got, like, we need to do this online. How can I plug a camera into a computer and make this look not horrible? And at that point, our church, we turned our stage into a bit of a sound stage and a set. So I was like, well, why don't you come here? We'll film this on set. We'll do the multicam thing, and did that all in one go. So that's where that kind of started. And then we turned into like the GitHub and those kind of productions. So we're doing a lot more of those bigger productions, but also a lot of smaller ones. So I'm in Sydney and he lives in Byron, which is about an hour flight away from that. So I've set up his office as a studio there with lights and all things I can remote control. So I do a lot of productions there for a lot of big name tech companies and that kind of thing. And so he'll stream to me. We'll bring in live contributors. So we're doing a lot of live events, going to Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff. So doing a lot of those, doing a lot of live events. So that's why I'm here in the States. We had an event in LA a few days ago. We were doing a multicam for that. So that's what brought us here. And I was like, well, Tennessee's not that far comparatively. Let's
yeah, when you don't put an ocean in between us.
When it's not like a 14-hour flight between one island and the other. It's it's not that far. So.
That's awesome. So in your field of work, what's the sort of a brand of equipment that you would choose, like that would kind of fit your workflow? What's the kind of gear that you would choose to sort of work in your company with? So
I'm a big fan of choosing the right tool for the job, and I mean I do have preferences, but it's like in filming I'll use what do we have budget for, and I love shooting an Arri and things like that. But I have moved a lot into the Blackmagic side of things because for price, for performance, it's really hard to beat.
Yeah.
And especially in the live route, we've got a Constellation 8K, which is what we switch on, a whole bunch of HyperDecks, use a lot of Ursas for cameras as well, so Ursa Mini Pros, Ursa Broadcasts, that kind of stuff. And we've now started, actually after watching your videos, I was like, this is not horrible. I definitely want to look into this because I've done a lot of green screen work, and I'm like, yeah, it can look good in post once you've done a lot of work and light it right. But I was like, actually, if you can do this well live, I'm very curious about this because we have like a little studio space in our office, and we're going, what can we do with the space? Because it's really, it's a small space, but we want to be able to just churn out content for our clients. And looked at it and went, okay, if we throw a green screen cyc in here, and we literally finished it like 2 weeks ago. So bought our first Ultimat, and we've done a few productions since then, and it's gone pretty well so far. So
awesome.
I've still got a lot of learning to do, but yeah, that's why I was keen to pop by here and see what you guys do. And
that's funny because I have a little list of questions here, and one of the questions I was going to ask is why virtual? Because like here, a lot of people think it's like the newest tech, and that we're pushing into like, we're pushing into the next space just to be advanced and just to be able to give our clients this. But really, in reality, we went to virtual because we all have families and we like to go home. We don't want to stay here building sets until 1 a.m. in the morning just to get up and come here at 6 and film until 7 the next day, and then no one's happy, and the work, your quality will probably be downgraded if you're constantly under a lot of stress and a lot of time crunch. So the virtual aspect is really out of necessity for us so that we can do more with the space. And it's definitely proven to give us that advantage and allow us to do a whole lot more. And of course that morphs the more that we learn. We continue to realize there's different things that we can do. So was it like sort of related in that, like a necessity for like, okay, so you have a certain square footage of space that you can use, but you can only do so much with a physical set in that space, and then there's time consuming elements to that. So
I mean, I've done a whole bunch of corporates, and you walk into an office and you get given this tiny boardroom, and you're going to go, what on earth am I going to do with this? And it's just, you just kind of, maybe this corner, like if I angle this right, I can make something out of this. But yeah, ultimately it's just looking at this space going, sure. I mean, I was looking at those, there was a couple of videos that came out about having the LCD screens vertical, making a kind of a window out of that. We're pretty close to actually pulling the pin on that.
Was that Epic Light Media?
Yeah, so it was Epic Light Media. There's a couple more that
shout out to Epic Light Media.
Yeah, shout out.
Yeah, I love them.
And yeah, so I saw that. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. That gives us some flexibility. But I'm like, oh, hang on. As much as I hate green screen, it does mean you can do pretty much anything within reason. And yeah, it was one of those things. I'm like, okay, this gives us the most flexibility. It's not perfect, but if we can give people a decent job with us in a sound treated room, in a soundproof room, in a controlled environment, you don't have people walking through a shot and ruining your thing,
or the sun changing every 45 seconds,
all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can just pump out content and just keep going and not have to worry about that, and even change locations in no time.
Yeah, quite literally.
It's quite hard to beat that.
Yeah.
And you can charge decently for it as well. So I'm like, well, rather than having to lug all my gear around, I just walk them into the office, turn on some lights. It's not like this, but it's a lot better than having to lug it all in and set it up.
Yeah, you want to describe it. Andre always says, like, it's the magic button, and boop, now we're in another set. And it's like,
ta-da.
When we first get started, we kept saying things like that, like, yeah, it should be easy because, like, all we'll have to do is come in and change this and click this button, and boom, now the light's different. And we're like, oh, but you still got to move the scrim, and we got to change the table.
And Paul Morgan hasn't slept all night because he's been frantically trying to get Unreal working. And
no doubt.
Why is it not working?
I try to say this. I tell anybody who comes in here, and also I try to say this on the debrief too. Like, if Morgan doesn't exist, then none of this stuff works. So I just want to continue to bring that up.
Shout out Morgan.
Shout out Morgan. Morgan, do you have anything to say? He is currently.
I'm TDing this production here, so this would not happen.
Literally. This would not be here.
No, it was funny. Little side note about Morgan. That there was no one in that shot. Just kidding. Side note about Morgan. Andre and I used to be the tech team. Tyler also works here. He is incredible with his hands and building things and doing things like that. And tech isn't like really his world. So we used to like have all of our computers run through the video hub, et cetera, et cetera. But we used to have this like blinking problem where all of our screens, nothing would ever work. And we weren't really sure what was like happening. Morgan comes here and he hits us up on Instagram and he's like, you guys have a really clean build. I'd love to come check it out. And within 35 minutes of talking to this guy, Andre's like, okay, how do we hire him? Like literally, because he comes in and he starts talking all the lingo. He's saying all the things. And then after like 3 days of him working here, none of those tech problems exist. And Andre and I are over in the other room like, yes, perfect. It's like that extra piece that we like actually had to have. It wasn't even optional. And he just like fell into our lap, like hitting me up because he knew some other people that I knew on Instagram. So he just kept messaging us.
The world needs more Morgans, basically.
It's true, Absolutely. Dude. Yep. Okay, so sorry, we went off on a Morgan tangent, but that was well deserved.
Very well. Yes.
We were talking about like why virtual, but you seem to have like a really high production quality standard. I kind of hear that in like your answers and stuff. So do you see that higher quality production when you look at things on YouTube? And in this world of virtual production, do you see that standard that you're trying to meet often? Or is it like something that you're battling to like deal with mentally, that it's something that you might not want to dive into exactly because it might not look good enough? Because we had that at first. For
yeah, it is a difficult one because it's very easy to get it wrong, and you can spend all this time prepping for something and realize, oh, actually, that doesn't look great at all.
Yeah.
And I was reluctant because I'm like, I know what green screen can't do, and while it's not perfect, there are.
Isaac, just go out the door. I wish you guys could see what's going on. We have a giant metal door here, and it's extremely loud when you open it, and he was trying to sneak out. Okay. Sorry, continue.
Should I jump from the answer there?
Yeah, sure.
What was the question?
So basically, like, you sound like, and it sounds like from your background, like you really care about the quality of the product that comes out, the quality of the image, and you don't want it to look, what in the United States, word that you can take home with you, or maybe you know this, is hokey. We don't want it to look hokey. We don't want it to look like, oh, cool green screen and look at me. It's very fake, but haha, I'm standing on a spaceship that's flying by the moon. It's like, no, we want to put you in an environment where like nobody knows this is green screen. We want this to look super cinematic. So I was asking if that was like a difficulty for you.
Yeah, it definitely is a difficulty. The one thing that I've tried a lot during COVID is because everyone's used to, up the nose, people on their laptops, and, it's just everything looks horrible. And
you can say it. Zoom.
Oh,
yeah.
That word. And people are fatigued about it. People are tired. They're just constantly in meetings, and being able to do something that has that wow factor and that actually looks different, you go, okay, that's pretty cool. We love doing events where they go, oh, this is definitely pre-recorded. We're like,
nope.
We just said something in the chat. How's that pre-recorded? Like, it's a lot of fun when you're like, yes, people thought it was pre-recorded. I feel like that's the bar that we go for. But yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to set that bar high and trying to make it something that I want to watch, because if I don't want to watch it, then why would anyone else want to watch it?
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah.
What do you see as like the standard in the chroma key world? Is there anybody that like stands out to you that you like find them and you're like, oh, well, that looks amazing, and like that, I think I do want to like try and show something that looks like what these individuals are doing?
I mean, I saw this thing on SociallyU, I think I saw on the internet.
I wasn't baiting you with that question.
I was telling you bait. No, honestly, you guys have done a very good job, and like, again, that's why I'm here, because I'm like, you guys are, I feel like are setting the standard for this, and it's looking really good. And I am keen to see more of this, because I haven't really seen anything else online doing this style of thing. It's funny, when I ordered Ultimate and I went to a event, it's a news channel basically, and I was talking to the tech team and looking at their video going, man, this looks horrible. Like, are they keying on like an ATEM on OBS or something? And I'm like, oh no, this is a 4K Ultimate. I'm like, oh gosh, what if I just bought? I'm like,
yeah.
have I just bought some garbage, but they're just not shooting or lighting it well? But I'm like, they're using the exact same system and that you guys are.
Right.
So
right.
It's interesting to see. I'm like, yeah, you really can do it wrong.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I mean, we've all seen bad green screen. We all know that it can and does look horrible.
Yes, of course.
If it's not done right. But
I can't see it on TV. Like, my wife is like, Jay, shut up. If she's like watching a TV and I'm like, that's keyed, look at her hair, it's awful, she's like, I literally don't care. And I'm like, sorry. And I'm like, we'll pause it, and I'll like take a picture and I'll like send it to the studio group chat. I'm like,
I feel like that was the first 15 minutes of my life in production. I'd sit in movies and go, oh yeah, that was shot in Fujifilm, and I think that was Master Prime. So I reckon that's. So I used to be able to try and pick it, but now I'm just like, I'm just going to enjoy stuff now.
Yeah,
I'm totally sick of trying to pick things, but at the same time, watching stuff is the best way to learn, because you look at things and go, how do they do that? And if it's horrible, how do I not do that? And if it's great, how do we do that?
Well, I like asked you the quality question because when we first got into green screen, it was like, it wasn't the necessity thing yet. So there's a company here, just south of here is Ringgold, Georgia, and then Dalton, Georgia. And it's like per capita, or I don't know, I'm going to butcher this, but they make, it's like the world of carpets, dude. Like, where any carpet that you see in the world basically like comes out of this place in Georgia.
Are they shutting down though? Because I feel like any carpet shop has to be shutting down.
I don't know.
I don't know. It seems to be this unwritten rule. Maybe that's an Australian thing. I don't know what it
is.
Well, maybe every carpet store is just shutting down.
That's hilarious. Well, maybe it's because Shaw's just like taking over the world. Maybe. Which, yeah. Well, but what they do is they have all these partners, and so they do a live event where, dude, they rent Disney out, the whole thing, for just the people that are in their event. Wow. And COVID happens, and they're like, what do we do? So Harris, who we literally just did a debrief on a few minutes ago, he works with them. He's like their guest speaker. So he brought them here, and they wanted to do a virtual thing with Unreal Engine with this other company from Atlanta. And we were like, yeah, we know how to chroma, so we like painted this, like we bought a floor from Home Depot, the hardware store, flipped it over, painted it green, and hung like green fabric that's literally sitting in a chair over in the other room that we're selling to somebody. And and it looked meh. Like, it looked really bad. But Andre was like, okay, no, I get the concept, but the the quality of the product that he wants to deliver is like next level of your next level of the next level. Like he wants it to look amazing at all times. Doesn't matter what kind of client it is. It doesn't matter who's in here. It's like we want to represent the studio with like the most amazing image possible at all time. So like we did a few different tests of like a different technologies to see how we could get to that quality level. And of course, price point is like a huge thing, but really it's really about that final image. That's why I asked you the quality question, because at first when we did green screen, it was like, do we do this? I don't know. But then we found out about the Ultimate, and we started, Morgan and Andre just basically just like came up with the entire new workflow that we're going to move into themselves. And then in 2 weeks, we built this entire thing, and now it's taken off, and it looks the way it does. Yeah. And of course, I baited that question to you, but
absolutely.
When we were at NAB, I was going around looking at all the chroma stuff there, and my strategy is I would look at people that were using different equipment, and we would sit around, and it was like a kind of like people would sit around and watch what they're doing. You could see the virtual production, and I would sit there and be like, okay, not talking trash about anybody, but I was like, none of this really looks good. And I would pull up my phone with examples, and I would just like poke the person next to me, and I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? And then in conversation, I would be like, here's what we do. And like every time I showed it to people, they would be like, wait, what? This looks amazing, And so I'd be like, yep. And then I'd have them scan our QR code so they knew who we were. But that quality it seems to be catching up because of people like you and people like Andre who aren't going to settle for the hokey looking green screen. So
I think a big part of that as well is historically green screen has been broadcast. It's been on a
weather
broadcast camera. Yeah, it's been weather report, news gatherers, whatever, and that's been. I feel like they've kind of nailed that. Yeah, and they do it every day, and they do the weather thing. But I think the difference is now that we've got cinema is combining with that live broadcasting. And so when we do our live events, we're using cinema camera, we're using the URSAs, and we're using big sensors and things like that. Because I'm just sick of the small sensor look. I like the shallow depth of field and all those kind of things. So, so I feel like having the film lighting, the film cameras, and combining that with broadcast, I feel like that's where it's really coming together nicely.
Yeah. That's a perfect description.
Yeah, because it's like cinema, obviously we watch cinema because it looks beautiful and stories and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, why can't we combine these two? Yep. We have the technology now. We have the way of getting out of these cameras as a clean feed, and we can throw it into an Ultimate, which is not designed for cinema, but ultimately it's taking a picture. Yeah. And getting a nice clean picture out of it. So
totally.
Why not?
Yeah. And if you're watching this and you're like, oh, Ultimate, I have one of those. Oh, well, I'm not getting that, Andre has a video that's, I say blown up on YouTube, but for us, 10K, is a great amount of views. And he goes over the Ultimate and how he uses it and what settings to do, but like you can't get to those settings in the Ultimate to make them look good until you've lit it properly and you're using the right kind of cameras.
Yep.
Because without the proper lighting and without the proper cameras, you're never going to get that filmic cinematic look that in your head you're going for that doesn't come out in your product. And you're right, like with news, that was a really good description and a really good point to bring up because like and I saw a lot of this at NAB too. It's like, okay, blast it with light. And I don't even think anybody understands false color, 44 IRE, anything like that. And so they just think that like even lighting means even key, and then it should look good. But when you try to put somebody, it does on a weather screen, right? Yeah. But when you try to put somebody in an environment where there's lights on the outside and you want it to look cinematic and fit in there, you're never going to get that until you adapt how you light and how you do things.
Yeah, I mean, lighting is a huge beast by itself, but just a big source, like a relatively big source to a person, makes a huge difference.
Yep. Like a 8x8 scrim gym.
Like an 8x8 scrim gym. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my early YouTube videos was done on a GH3, which is a 10-year-old camera, which is not that great. Yeah. And just with a bit of decent lighting, it can look good. Yeah. Like it's not about the latest and greatest thing an average system, like an average camera, an average thing, you can make it look good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who get into the hobby of doing film like me, when I first came in, I didn't want to learn anything. I just wanted to make the video. And whatever, cool, you do lighting. I don't know what you're talking about. But as soon as I started working here, and as soon as Andre started like showing me different styles of lighting, Rembrandt or side lighting or butterfly or, you know, all the different kinds, like, and concentrating on that, that's when I started to notice like a real shift in the quality difference. And like I have a friend who's a Kiwi, used to play soccer here, and he did like a life journey video, and I lit him. I had him sit at my kitchen table, and I actually had lights at home, and I lit him for the first time, and it like a light bulb went off, and I was like, yep,
Literally,
it's literally, and it like it clicked. I was like, oh yep, you're right. And so that being brought with virtual, that is the key. And that's why I brought up the Ultimate thing, because at the beginning of that video, it's all about lighting. That's all it is. So that's really the main thing you can concentrate on. By the way, the GH5 is my favorite camera of all time, because you could basically jump on a trampoline and that thing is just rock solid.
I'd like to see that. That'd be
me jumping on a trampoline with a GH5.
Yeah, that'd be
okay.
good.
We can organize that. Okay, so when you're getting into the virtual world, you've mentioned the Ultimate. So you use the Ultimate for your keying. Do you guys do tracking, or do you guys use Unreal? Do you guys shoot plates? What's your setup in your workflow?
So honestly, we're still quite new to it. So we bought it like 2 weeks ago, and we're still learning it. We're just playing with it. We haven't had time really to play with it much, but we've had 2 clients in, and the products look quite good. You know, they'd be pretty happy with it. So that's a good tick. That out of the box, we've done a decent job.
Are you using Unreal Engine with that?
We did do in one of them. We just got a free template off the marketplace.
Yeah.
And we've got a beefy PC which we output it from. So still got a lot of learning to do in there. But ultimately, for this client, we ended up just using a photo from our office, which was like 20 feet away from where we actually filmed it in the studio. So it's a bit weird. Like, we're filming over there, here, but hey, we had lighting control, we had sound control, and it was great.
And that's your proof of concept, right? That's how you get into it, and that's when you go, okay, now I can justify spending the money to get into this
too much
space.
money. Yep.
Yes, trust me. The number one thing I hear Andre say, and I know you're listening, is haha, I'm broke. Those words together.
Yeah.
So. But man, when you look at the product that we've been delivering to people, it's awesome. So no tracking, plans of going into the tracking field?
I'd like to. We do have an Exebo, and
there you go.
We're keen to plug it in and try it.
Yeah.
But again, it's just more of a, we'll have the need first, and the client's like, oh, can we do a 3-camera shoot? I'm like, oh, no, I need 3 cameras and 3 Exebo, three Ultimates, and like, I'm just adding up the numbers.
For 3 computers.
And the Australian dollar is worth just about nothing, so it's it hurts.
Yeah, and Andre is like, once he solidifies an idea, he's like all in. So we have 6 computers. And we may have more. We have 8 cameras, which we can only use 6 with the computers, but sometimes there's ways to get around that. And then, yeah, of course, we have the Ultimate controller here, and you can have 8. So he's like, man, we got it, and let's just slam it full, because it immediately takes off for us. And that's so true for our studio here, is like the moment we buy something like that, when we're ready for that 80 by 80 video hub, because the moment it happens, we're going to need another one. Because we're going to, it's just like every time we just put it in, and it's like, we're getting it because it's new. Holy crap, we needed this, and we had no idea. So that's how things happen.
It is amazing with equipment, because I was doing a lot of my streams with just a 18 mini extreme ISO.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And then we got the 40 by 40. I'm like, how did I go from 8 to 40? And nothing really changed, but now this is full.
But you plugged it, all the way.
Oh, I have holes now.
Hey, you know what's funny to us? That's a very different people feel different ways about that, because when we met you in Vegas, we were all eating dinner, and shout out my man Doug Johnson, who's a legend in the game.
Yeah.
He was like, he said something like, I've never filled the video hub. Or Morgan, do you remember what he said? I can't remember.
I don't think he's filled his 20 input switcher. production studio.
Yeah, he was like,
Yeah,
I
he
just
still had openings on his switcher, I believe.
I was like, how?
And I was like,
like,
what?
Can we have some?
Yeah, like, can you share?
So yeah, we slammed things full. That was really funny because like Morgan and I like left dinner, we gambled. Morgan won money, I did not. And then when we got up to the room, we were like sitting there, and Morgan and I were just talking about that. We were like, that's hilarious. Doug said he didn't fill it, and we're like stressing for Black Magic to come out with, they had the bigger option before the 80 by 80 was announced, but it was only 3G and it was like a modular thing. It wasn't plug and play like the 40 by 40 that we have now. So okay, so sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but so you've got your Ultimat, you've got your lighting, and we've talked about all of that. And shout out to Exebo, by the way. We love Exebo.
Oh yeah.
If you're looking to do tracking without something like Vive Mars, also shout out Vive Mars. But if you're looking to do tracking without something like that's not optical, the Exebos are great. Also for different reasons to be able to remote control. But
Yeah, I mean, just the other day I had two presenters coming in. They were different heights, and I'm in the control room, which is a couple of steps away, but I could just sit there and just tilt up.
Yep.
And tilt down.
We
We
were
have
doing-
to walk in the studio.
we
It's
were
great.
doing that Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're filming this on Monday or Tuesday. It is Tuesday.
I have no idea.
Ah, man, the days of the week run together. Okay, you guys built a cyc wall.
Yes.
What was that process for you like? You can just touch on that briefly. I don't want to keep you here too long, but
Yeah. I mean, I got
'cause
a flight to catch, so it's
yeah,
So we were considering doing it ourselves because we've seen people going, "Oh, it's okay." It's. I'm like, actually, you know what? I'm just going to pay someone to do it.
jealous.
It's yeah. There's a company in Melbourne who make the corner pieces and bits, things like that. So they make it out of gyprock, and they've made their own molds and stuff like that. And it's beautiful, just absolutely seamless. They spent 4 days building it, I think,
It's awesome,
and yeah, sanding it back, doing all the things.
man. It's a mess, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Man, because you've seen our studio. I mean, all of our gear. We have to we built our own,
Yeah.
and we did it a very different way. Not conventional is the best way to describe it. And
I mean,
and
what is conventional?
you
It's
can,
kind of a new thing.
especially in this world, no
Yeah.
doubt. But you can see, like, especially when you turn on false color and you have it lit the right way, you're like, oh my gosh, look at every imperfection possible. But we make do with it. But yeah, it is an extreme mess, the amount of sanding that goes into that. So if anybody was ever to be like, hey, Jay, I'm thinking about a cyc wall, I'd be like, yeah, look into buying at least a
Pay
pre-built
someone.
corner. Yeah.
Yep.
And don't trust people from Sand Mountain, which is a place in Georgia, who claim they can do a level 5 finish, because they can't. Only people in the studio will understand what I'm talking about. Okay, a couple more questions. We use Chromolite paint.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of paint did you guys go for?
So the team that did ours, they are working on becoming Australian resellers of Chromolite. So
Cool.
I was like, yeah, this seems to be a decent thing, so you should try it out. So we currently got the Roscoe paint. That's
Yeah.
what they had. So, which was fine. I mean, it's green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did a thing. So.
Yeah, I would just kill right now to have a wall, like a cyc wall that was half and half. So you could just run the exact same thing and bounce back and forth and look at spill level and all that stuff. Because we have achieved awesome keys with using Chromolite, sometimes even when we don't get that like proper exposure. Of course, there's what's it called? Morgan, where we take a picture of the background. Basically, it's blanking.
Talking about a
clean
clean
plate.
plate kind of scenario. to
Yeah.
help.
So even when we don't we haven't even lit the floor and we're showing the person's feet sitting at a table and we don't have the it best on the back. Even when we do a clean plate, like the key is just like awesome, and we've achieved that with this paint. I've never done anything with Roscoe, so I would just be very interested. I only see it at trade shows.
I mean, yeah. I'll try and do a side by side if we can while we're painting the new
Oh,
one.
dude, that's a good idea.
Like just paint over top and
yeah,
we'll see.
yeah.
There could be no difference whatsoever. It could just be Roscoe paint with a different tin. Who knows? Who knows?
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so my final question is, what do you think about the state of virtual production and how the prosumer level is advancing so fast? It seems to me that we sort of fit that professional level here, but we also have like a prosumer niche about us to where we're kind of like, yeah, we're professional, we're a company, and we're doing things professionally for different things, that productions that we're doing, but we're also at that prosumer level where we're just like, well, no, try it out and figure it out and see if it works. You know what I mean? So what are you thinking about the state of virtual production and how it's advancing so fast for the people that aren't Hollywood doing it frame by frame?
I mean, has anyone ever just made it? Because I feel like we're all learning, and anyone who's not learning, you can tell they're just not doing well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's
because if anyone kind of goes, yeah, no, we're good, we just do our thing, I'm like, well, all power to you.
Yeah.
'Cause you're probably not going to do well in the next couple of weeks.
yeah. In 2 weeks, everything will change.
Exactly.
And we'll be doing something else.
That's what I love about this community, and that's one of the reasons why I got into YouTube as well, because I'm like, there's so many people out there that I can learn from,
Yeah,
and hopefully can learn from me as well. It's like we all have skills in different things, and let's do what we can to share that.
yeah,
And you know, it's not really new tech, but it's, hey, how do we use this tech and make it better? You know, like, you know, there's new things coming out every year, and one thing I noticed about NAB is that there wasn't much new. I don't know if you found the same thing, but it was just like there's some new things, but I feel like we're kind of plateaued a little bit in terms of technology. Of like, we have our cameras, our lights, and things, like everything's just getting, you know, 1% better every so often. But
Yeah.
like, I don't feel like there's. I'm trying to think what a big thing that came out a few years ago that was like, wow, that's the new thing. But
yeah. It's so funny because I had to giggle at that when you said that a little bit, because when we sat down with you, or Morgan hung out with you guys, I was so tired. That was my first NAB ever, so I was worn out.
yeah,
And I went back to the room, took a nap, and then I came down and hung out with you guys. Luckily, you guys had come to the building. I was super happy about that. But what you said, you sat back and you said something. You said, you know, I feel like this NAB was sort of, there wasn't, yeah, you said, like, I don't feel like there was that much new stuff. And you said, unless you're, like, diving deep into virtual production, that you didn't really see anything that, like, really caught the eye. You know,
I mean, compared to the first NAB I was at, which I think was 2006.
you told me this. I asked you your first NAB yesterday, and you said
Yeah.
it was when the GoPro Hero came out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was a new thing, and I think Red maybe was jumping in the game with their RAW camera and 4K and that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like those were the old days of, you know, 4K action cameras,
Yeah.
like all these new cool
Yeah.
things. But I'm like, I feel like we're just kind of, like, even with the iPhone, like, we've had that same iPhone for 5 years. I mean, it's really not much different. So
yeah,
I'm keen to see what the next thing is.
yeah,
But I feel like in the meantime, we're kind of stuck here now.
yeah,
We've got some great tech, and how can we make it better? How
Yeah.
can we make it work for us?
with
So-
what you've already got, right?
exactly, because I mean, the best tool is the tool you've already got. So you might as well use it.
Yeah,
And
That's awesome.
I love buying gear, but at the same time, I know I have to make money to, you know,
to fund that habit.
feed my family. So
Yeah.
it's like, and to fund the habit. As well.
Yeah, we went in two different directions. Oh, that's so funny, man. Well, dude, one thing my dad always told me is that I never meet a stranger. It's like a skill that I have, and I noticed that like big time. And Andre and Isaac too is very similar. And one thing I think that's really important is like making connections and like really talking to people.
Mhm.
And it turns out that like some of those will flourish into like cool relationships and friendships. So like I think you're like a prime example of us like finding somebody and then meeting them in Vegas and then like opening a dialogue. Like you and I, you commented the other day, like we have a machine shop next door and one of the guys was riding on top of the forklift and you like DM'd me and you were like, only in America. And I thought that was hilarious, but like keeping that dialogue and like keeping that friendship, even though you literally live an ocean away, well, an entire country and an ocean away, you know, a really long flight, keeping those relationships and seeing how they can bud and you kind of like lean and like learn with each other and like, it makes the stress of trying to dive into a field and learn something more fun because you're doing it with other people. So I just wanted to say that it's been super cool having you here. And I know Andre and I know Morgan, you can chime in too, if you want to say anything. Like, everybody feels that way. And I think that's such a cool thing that no matter what you do in life, that is something that you should put in your back pocket as a skill, because it's going to take you places for sure.
100%.
So.
Yeah. Always learn from people and keep relationships. Like, this whole industry is based on relationships.
Yeah.
Like, you can have the coolest resume, website, whatever, but until you actually meet someone and they go, oh, this guy's awesome. A couple of words from someone who knows someone will mean way more than anything else.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Morgan, you have anything to say before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been awesome to have Ryan here with us and learning, and we've been able to bounce ideas back and forth. And as someone who watches a lot of YouTube content, it's kind of crazy to me that we're all interconnected, right? It's such a small world to have everybody come in and work together in this virtual production space.
Okay, before we close out, you got to plug your company, you got to plug your channel. Tell everybody that is the millions of people that are watching this. Tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
All right. Well, yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Ryan Somerfield, Somerfield. That's my YouTube channel. So I attempt to try and release content every so often when I have a fraction of time to do so. And my company is Tiny Giants AV. So we do AV fit outs, we do sales, and consulting. So if you ever have any thoughts, questions, queries, death threats, anything you want to ask, hit me up and we will do our best to help you out. So that's me.
Awesome. And, the same old, I'm going to ask you guys, share this with, first off, this has been such an awesome conversation. So I feel like this could open the eyes of anybody who's getting into any level of production, really, not only virtual, but anything. But if you guys want to like the video, subscribe to the channel, show us some love. We love it when you guys comment, because people say things about like audio sync issues, and I see something that I miss in an edit, and I love that. Even though that's something I mess up on, like, I love that interaction, and I love when people ask questions. It gives us ideas for future videos and different things for us to do. So you guys just keep talking to us, and we will keep delivering and responding. But until the next video, we will see you guys later.